welcome to the Whole You podcast where culture meets wellness. I miss you guys. We were not together last Monday, which I really want us to agree that we're going to spend our Mondays together, that we're going to start our weeks out together. But we were not together last week intentionally. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But right before I get into that, how are y'all doing? I really want to know now. You know, we do check ins at the beginning of this pod. And so I genuinely do want to know, and I do care. Drop a note in the chat. Let me know how your last 2 weeks have been. Have they been challenging? Have they been difficult? Or it's okay to say, the last 2 weeks have been amazing. The last 2 weeks have been crazy productive. The last 2 weeks, the favor of God has been changed. I don't know what's going on, but stuff is in a really good place. And so, whatever it is, let me know how you're feeling, okay? So, let's get back though to the fact that I just said we haven't seen each other in 2 weeks. And that is because last week, y'all know what we were doing. So let's get into this culture code because it's raining red. It's y'all. It's raining red. Where? In your country. In your country. This your country. And it is raining red in your country. And to that I want to say, am I the only? Am I by my? I don't know if I'm by myself because I don't really know the political demographic of this pod audience right now. But y'all, it is raining red. We took a break last week because I wanted to focus. I wanted y'all to focus. I wanted everybody to be praying on Monday about what they were going to do on Tuesday. And now we know what has happened, and it is raining red, right? So now President Donald Trump, I think he's 45, right, is going to be 47. Our nation has reelected Donald Trump to serve a second term. We are also all red, all Republican regarding the House and the Senate. And so, yeah, that is where we are now since we were last together. So, we're going to talk about what's going on in culture. This is the biggest culture code that we could ever talk about. And so I'm going to give you guys some of my perspectives. I definitely want to hear how you guys are feeling. Like at this point, we're about 6 days out. I don't know how last week was for you, but I definitely want to hear how you feel and how you're feeling. So let me share with you how I feel. A couple of things. One, I love politics. For those that know me, they know that it's something that's always interested me. I think that because I like, as a social scientist, to look at power dynamics as well as governance. When you look at politics, you are also moving in the area of leadership. And so those are areas that are just innately interesting to me. Also, probably just based on what I'm called to do vocationally. And I also understand the impact that politics has on the world that I'm living in. And so I love to watch politics. MSNBC, people know, is my favorite show. Shout out to Rachel Maddow. I love all of the news anchors that they hire at MSNBC. Also, their set design is fire. Very colorful. And so it keeps me interested. They have great guests. If I'm not watching MSNBC, I'll shift over to CNN. But MSNBC is really my go-to when it comes to like around the clock information on what's going on politically. And I myself am concerned about what this means for us over the course of the next 4 years because of the fact that I am a Christian. And so that is my faith tradition. And I definitely am not worried. I'm not discouraged. And that's only because I come from a faith framework where I personally believe that God is in control of all things. And I personally, based on my faith, believe that nothing happens that He has not allowed to happen. So that gives me a little bit of peace. But even with my belief in that faith wise, I'm still concerned. I'm not naive to the impact that leaders have on us as citizens. And so President Trump has presented himself over the entirety of his time on the political landscape in a way that to me is not positive, in a way that is divisive, in a way that has shown racism and sexism. And so, as a result of that, my concern with him ruling our nation again is not necessarily just his politics, but it's the way that he's showing up as a human being, and that behavior opening up the door for people who share those ideologies that I believe are cancerous for the unity that is necessary for people to be able to live harmoniously with one another. That is really my concern. Okay. I don't know if you share the same concern, but that is my concern. Now, one of the things that I do think is that I don't want, in any discouragement that people may feel, to ignore the fact that President Biden and Vice President Harris are not done, that there are still days that they have left in the White House. And there are things that they can still do, even up until the last moment for all my West Wing watchers, up until the last hour. There are still things that they can do that can help us as a nation. And so I'm going to talk about those really quickly based on the things that who knows that I think would be great for them to do. And then I have one other thing that I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to transition. But because I have $5 million worth of student loan debt, I'm going to need for Biden to find a way to just, I don't know what you need to do, President Biden, but me, Khalida Tahira Forbes, I'm asking you to figure out what it is that you need to do, which I really think you might be able to do by executive order or something, so that we can do away with the debt. Okay. And so I really would like for us to be able to do that where student loans are concerned. I think that there are still a couple of things that President Biden can do in an attempt to try to secure our concept or moving forward regarding universal health care. Family, I really dream of a time where as a nation we will be able to join as other nations do and are successful regarding being able to provide universal health care for all of our citizens. Super important to me. In addition to that, there are a lot of things that they can do to put policies in place that will help even on the state level, bringing some things that are federal under state regulation and even taking some state regulated things and bringing them into a federal space. I think that one of the things that we can be hopeful for and even commenting on social media or even praying about if you are a person of faith is that in these last days, that President Biden and Vice President Harris are able to stay focused on their assignment. And in the midst of this transition, that they will be able to get as much done as they need to. Now, I do want to say one last thing. I can have people that watch this pod who are not Democrats and who may not have voted for Vice President Kamala Harris. And I want you to know that that is okay. We're going to talk a little bit more possibly about that before we close out this episode, but I want you to feel welcome here. I don't want you to feel judged here. And I definitely am happy for you if you believe that President Trump can do positive things for our nation. And so one of the things that I would challenge you to do, if that is your perspective, is that I would ask you as a fellow citizen to guard the office regarding one word, and that word is decency. That if this is the candidate that you felt would lead us forward, that you would hold your candidate of choice accountable for the way that they do the various policies that they're trying to initiate. There is a way to do things that still has a level of decency and respect, and that does not cause us to be divided as a nation. But I do want you to know that I don't want you to feel ostracized if it is that you just did not believe that Vice President Kamala could get the job done. And I respect the fact that you feel that way. Okay. So our culture code for today is that it's all things red. It's raining red. And that's just what it's going to be. And so we need, as Vice President Kamala said, to not throw up our hands, but this is the time, she said, to roll up our sleeves. I want to encourage all of us, I'm talking to myself, to not feel like we're going to sit the next 4 years out, because that's not going to work. But how can we get involved? How can we stay connected? How can we serve? How can we have seats at the table, right? Because we're not going to sit on the sidelines for 4 years. We still need to make sure that our voices are heard. So I'm still proud to be an American. So let me close out the reasons why I am proud to be an American, and then we're going to transition. I don't know if any of you all have traveled internationally. The hotels, very small. I don't know if you've ever, I've been to so many countries, which I'm grateful for. So many different countries. Y'all, their hotel rooms are small. You can't barely move. And so I am proud to be an American because our hotel rooms, you can actually move in. There's a chair in there. There is a couch in there. In addition to that, the way, I know I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I don't care. The scent. When I have visited other nations and I'm moving around, it smells, I'm not going to say bad. It doesn't smell like America. It doesn't smell like America. And so, see how I did that? It's no joke. So I'm going to stay over here. I'm going to stay over here with the scent that I'm accustomed to. The other thing we need to talk about is, the food. That's what we need to talk about. So I'm going to close here. Hey, y'all, listen. I went to Italy a couple years back on tour for over 3 weeks, almost a month. We traveled all over Italy. We also were there for an assignment where we were able to get like the best of Italy. The food I was expecting would be like, I don't know, New York pizza, Maggiano's. Y'all, I don't know if they use salt in Italy. I don't even know. Maybe they don't have no salt. I don't know if they use butter in Italy. Maybe they don't have any butter. But at the end, y'all, listen, when I got back from Italy, the next day, where was I? I was at Maggiano's doing family style because you know you can get at whatever you want and they just keep bringing it and then you can pack chop. And I ate that lasagna and that fettuccine alfredo, and I don't care what kind of poison is inside our food. I'm sorry, that sounds so ignorant, but I must like poison. But the only thing that was good over in Italy was that gelato. And so I am proud to be an American. I'm proud. Y'all be embarrassing me, but what I'm not doing is I'm not going nowhere. And some people, which we'll talk about in future pods, are going to other nations. And I have mulled that in my mind. I've thought about, like, it's crossed my mind. But right now, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stay here. Yeah, Stevie Wonder has something in Ghana. Stevie was like, I'm out. But for me, I'm gonna have to do some more research. Because yeah, I'm a little spoiled. So I'm gonna just be hanging out in the red zone. This is what we doing. And what President Trump does promise us? 4 years of not being bored. We will not be bored over the next 4 years. So for that, Donald, we appreciate you. Also, stop whatever tanning thing that you're doing. I don't know who's responsible. Melania, I don't know who's responsible. Whoever, somebody get this to their camp. Stop. Very orange. Like the pigment, it's gotten so much higher, like even within the last 14 days. It's as orange as these chairs. Hey, y'all stop that, okay? Because we don't want to look at that for the next 4 years. I'm serious. All right, let's move on. Boom. Y'all know what time it is. Ask Dr. K, right? So here is our question for today. How do I find contentment even though I've been in such a long waiting season? I don't know if maybe I sent this question to myself. I don't remember. Did I email myself? Um, I don't even know in this season if I'm qualified to give no, but seriously, I'm joking, but I'm not. First of all, let me say I understand how you're feeling right now. And when you know how if you have a job interview and they ask you what are the things that you need to work on, which all of us we be like, because you're trying to figure out now a good way to say something that may not necessarily be good. I'm always courageous enough to say, like, patience is something that I have to intentionally steward. And it's so interesting because if I look back over the course of my life, because of things that are honestly opportunities and blessings that I didn't orchestrate myself, I have not had to wait for things to happen. Shout out to my parents for that. Shout out to my grandparents for that. Um, and shout out to my own tenacity and discipline and determination. I tend to get things done. And so I'm not accustomed to waiting. And waiting is really a challenge, family, when you're waiting for something that is out of your control. It's a difference between waiting and you've already put the pieces in place. So you're waiting for like a time that you know is guaranteed to happen. And then there's another aspect of waiting where honestly, like if God doesn't do it, it won't happen. That type of waiting is not even just a waiting, that's like a waiting in faith, right? And so I have found myself personally that rehearsing the victories that I've had in the past, rehearsing for myself the times when I was impatient and wondering when, and reminding myself that when it happened, it was the perfect time. It lets me know that even though I feel like I want it now, it gives me a peace that I'm not waiting because it won't come to me, but that I could be waiting so that I'm fully prepared to be able to steward it once it arrives. So reminding myself of past seasons in the waiting room really helps me to have that sense of contentment. There's two other things I want to suggest for you to do. The second thing I want, that was number one. The second thing I want to suggest that you do is be intentional about paying attention to all of the things that you have in your life right now that you used to be waiting for. Because a lot of times when you're waiting for the next thing to happen, you will literally ignore the amazing things that are happening. It is really a trick. And the reason why it is very important to do that, especially in the realm of contentment, is because, family, if we don't do that, we will perpetually be waiting, or we will perpetually not be satisfied. And it is a very dangerous thing when, as soon as you receive something, you might look at it, you're grateful. Some of us need to look back and be convicted that we don't even sometimes make it an entire week or a month where it's just like, okay, and now we're literally on to the next thing that we're waiting to happen. Fam, we really have to watch that. I'm talking to myself included, okay? So when this person asks, how do I find contentment? I think that we need to live in contentment. So it's not something, this is blessing me personally, so that it's not something that I have to find. I exist in that place. And from that place, I'm not moved as I wait for the seasons that bring different things to manifestation. That's number two. The last thing, plug. So I talk for a living. Sometimes I like to talk about God for a living. And so if you want to go over on YouTube to a place called Truth City, and if you look through the videos on there, actually underneath the tab, what's the tab for the series? I don't know what that tab is called. But if you go to the page, I'm going to tell you what is it called?
Playlist.
If you look under playlists, scroll down and you'll see 4 videos that are called The Waiting Room, I believe. Yes. And I have gotten a lot of feedback, even actually, ironically, up to this very week, about how those 4 conversations that I had about waiting have really positively impacted people. So head over there if you'd like to. It's about 4 hours of content. And hopefully that will be able to help you as you wait as well. Okay? So hope that was helpful, but I want to let you know that your question was helpful for me as I answered it. So shout out to you. Okay, fam, where are we going now? You already know it's the situation room. We'll be having situations, okay? And so Danielle, who's our pod producer, is going to read this episode's situation.
Okay. This is hot off the press.
Okay.
Dr. K, I've got a situation. I work in a small office, and ever since the elections this week, tensions have been high. My coworker came into work wearing a red MAGA hat the day after Election Day. It feels like a direct provocation, especially since he knows some of our differing political views in the office. We've clashed before, but this time it feels different. I want to respect everyone's rights to their beliefs, but his comments about the election and his open support of policies I deeply disagree with make it almost impossible for me to work alongside him without feeling frustrated and on edge. I don't want to escalate things, but I also don't want to keep avoiding him or dreading every interaction. How do I keep this from affecting my work and find a way to coexist peacefully when we're clearly on opposite sides?
Yeah. That's a loaded question. Very ironic, but perfect for this episode. So let me say this. I'm not being compassionate, but I just want to get down to the root of this situation. All of us work with people that we don't agree with. I don't think there's any person that is working for any company, organization, or corporation that agrees with every single perspective of all the people that they work with. That is just usually, again, if we're corporate, if we're organization based, there's going to be a point in time where our views, our perspectives, our values are going to not align. This is my suggestion to you. One, I want you to give yourself grace because right now, what we're all feeling is a little heightened. And so give yourself some grace through the next couple of weeks because maybe you won't be able to be as engaging with that individual right now. But what I want you to keep in mind is the ability to hold space for people regarding the fact that we have to be able to agree to disagree. I wanted to say for us to caution to not lose or damage our relationships just because we do not agree. Okay. Now, someone can say, Dr. K, we're talking about fundamental views that I hold dear regarding my morality. And we're talking about decency, which I talked about. We're talking about the rights of women. I'm a woman, let's say. We're dealing with economics, and I'm concerned about how I'm going to feed my family. So we're dealing with immigration issues. And I literally am somebody, and I have relatives that could be living in my home that don't have documentation. I don't want to minimize how real this is. But I do want you to think about this. One of the things that is very unique about the United States of America is this thing that our Constitution has always tried to protect of our ability to differ, our ability to be able to have our say and not have our say silenced. If we're going to live in that type of a democracy, then in order to uphold my right to say, I agree with Vice President Kamala's policies and I don't agree with President Trump's. Let's say that's my perspective. If I want to be able to say that loud and proud and demonstrate that outwardly, then I have to be able to allow somebody else to be loud and to be proud and to demonstrate I believe in the Republican Party. I believe in President Donald Trump. It is what makes our country a democracy. It is what allows us to have freedoms. And what happens is that even with this peaceful transfer of power that needs to happen in January, it's easy to say that when it is that you're on the winning side, if you will. And so the fabric of our nation our decency doesn't even come up to be challenged until we do not agree. And so I want you to remember that when you're dealing with your coworker, that even though deeply within you and your value structure, you do not agree. And on top of that, you would probably be confused as to why they do agree. At the end of the day, they have the right to think differently from you. And so, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is this. One, I need you to still agree with the mission of the company that you guys are working for. I don't agree with your political views, but my assumption is that everyone at this conference table was hired and is getting paid because we agree with what the mission is of this organization. We can agree there. So I can show up and I can work with you in collaboration and in unity for us to push the vision of this organization, this company forward. That's what we get paid to do. And then the second thing you can do is this. If you might be willing to in the future, is to try to explore what are the things that you and that coworker do agree on. You could literally say, help me, right, to find our commonalities, the places and the spaces where we can agree, so that it helps me to be able in some respect to hold that person in somewhat of a positive light. This question is in situation is really provoking me to think about in the future really being able to do a separate pod on whether we need to agree in order to agree. Whether or not we can only interact with those that are completely identical to us. Because I want to challenge all of us that if we're going to be entrusted with any kind of leadership, now I'm talking to leaders or emerging leaders, that you will not always have the privilege of leading people that necessarily agree with your values and your morals. But you still have to find a way to be able to be at peace with one another. And so I think from a mental, emotional health, from a psychological perspective, as we close out this episode, that in the future, I'm going to do something about how we can positively disagree, so that in the future, none of us, myself included, are handicapped or even restricted from some opportunities or even experiences just because we're moving as if we demand symmetry or demand sameness or demand, again, agreement. It's interesting because in my faith tradition, we have this phrase that says, how can two walk together unless they agree? But then in my same faith tradition, I'm thinking about someone in that faith tradition that sometimes interacted with people that I'm not sure that he agreed with. I'm talking about Jesus, in case anybody's wondering. And so if it's okay with you guys in the future, we can all muse together about what that means. But what I do know, regardless of what your belief is, or even for those that right now feel like you don't have a faith belief, you could be an atheist right now. I want us to get to the point where we desire to be at peace with one another. Simply because I don't want to feel war in my soul. I don't want to feel war in my mind. And I honestly and truly do not want to be at war with any human being. And so, in the midst of all of our differences, what we have to find a way to agree about is that peace is much easier than war. Okay? So, family, it's raining red, but we're going to be okay, right? I want to remind you, you know what I'm going to say. I want you to like this episode. I want you to subscribe. I can't even, are you not subscribed yet? I need you to subscribe to this page, okay? I want you to share this with other people. And then I really, especially with this episode, can you guys let me know in the comment section how this week, last week was for you, whether you're raining blue, whether you're raining red, how things are moving. What was it like as you were interacting with other people in your family, at work, moving around in the mall, at restaurants? I'm curious if there's any stories or any experiences that you guys have had. Let me know about them. And as you can see, I myself personally, I will make sure that I respond. But let's have a dialogue about it. And then, as I said, I promise we're going to keep the dialogue going here at the Whole You Pod, where culture meets wellness.